Good evening and welcome to our special discussion on one of the India's most debated legislative measures, the Citizenship Amendment Act or the CAA. Today, we aim to delve deeply into its provisions, its implementations, its broader implications, and the debates it has sparked both nationally and globally. This act, passed in December 2019, has seen its shares of protests, praise, and legal challenges, making it one of the most polarizing policies in India's recent history.
Good evening, viewers. I'm Simran Kaur, and along with Riya, we will guide you through this multifaceted discussion. We are joined by a distinguished panel, Tanish, who will provide insights into the constitutional and legal debates surrounding the discussion. Sanidhya, here to discuss the societal and humanitarian discussion, and Varun, who will help us understand the economic and resource implication of implementing the Act. Tonight, we will cover every single angle, involving the policy's formulation, the numbers behind the promises, implementation hurdles, the legal battles, societal impacts, and potential solutions. Let's start by laying the groundwork.
So, viewers, let's start with our first segment and try to understand what is Citizenship Amendment Act or CAA. So, let's start with the basics. So, hi Tanish, can you explain what the CAA is and what makes it distinct from previous citizenship laws?
Hi Riya. Yeah, the Citizenship Amendment Act amends the India's Citizenship Act to 1955 to provide a pathway to citizenship for specific religious minorities such as the Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jain, Parsis and the Christians from three neighboring countries of Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh. The key condition is that they must have entered India on or before December 31st, 2014. The Act aims to protect communities fleeing religious persecutions, but notably it excludes Muslims, which is actually the crux of this entire controversy.
That was interesting. Varun, let's bring in some numbers. What scale are we talking about in terms of the political beneficiary?
The initial government estimate suggested that around 31,000 individuals, primarily Hindus and Sikhs, from these countries, our neighboring countries, could benefit from this act. These figures can break down the data suggests that around 25,000 individuals, predominantly Hindus and Sikhs from Pakistan, 5,000 individuals from Bangladesh, and 1,000 from Afghanistan. However, in mid-2024, the data shows that around 350 citizenship certificates had been issued under the CAA, highlighting the significant delays in the implementations.
That's so less. So, Sanidhya, what has been the public reaction to that act?
Yeah, so India is a large country, right? So the reactions are obviously mixed. The supporters of the CA, they see it as, they are correcting some sort of historical injustice against the religious minorities. However, the critics, they argue that by excluding the Muslims, the act undermines the India's very secular ethos. Protests have been widespread, they are everywhere and they are always in the news, and the most notable demonstrations, they are in Assam, Delhi and West Bengal, and around over 50 cities they witnessed large scale protests in 2019 and 2020, and if you're talking about the numbers, they are in lakhs.
All this makes me want to know more about the policy's formulation. Tanish, let's talk about it. Was it very thorough or all the stakeholders consulted?
Yeah, Simran. So the formulation of CAA was very contentious right from the very beginning, right? So while the act was debated in the parliament, critics argue that the population of India wasn't consulted enough, right? So the northeastern states, as Sanidhya mentioned, particularly Assam, was ignored. The region's concerns about demographic and cultural shifts due to migrations were largely ignored. Additionally, acts linked to National Register of Citizens, that is the NRC, created widespread apprehension.
So, Varun, our viewers are curious to know what about the data used to support the act? Was it robust enough?
Yeah, so the government cited persecution data from reports by NGOs and international organizations like UN, but there were some gaps. For instance, while the CA addresses refugees from 3 specific countries, it excludes others like the Rohingya Muslims from Myanmar or the Tamil refugees from Sri Lanka. This selective approach raises questions about the comprehensiveness of the underlying data.
Yeah, exactly. And one more concern which I would like to point out is the arbitrary date, which is 31st December 2014, right? And it was always unclear why this date was chosen. Was it related to any political alignment, or was it due to any migration patterns, or due to any persecution timelines?
That's interesting, Sanidhya. Tell me more. Do you think there was enough consultation before the law was passed?
No, I don't think so. And the answer is unfortunately no. While the government they emphasized on the humanitarian angle, the process appeared rushed. The consultations they were limited, and the concerns of the stakeholders, especially those in the north and eastern states of Assam and West Bengal, they were always overlooked, right? Assam, for instance, they have a very unique demographic challenge, right, due to the decades of migration from people in neighboring countries of Bangladesh. So the local communities they had always feared that the CA might dilute the cultural and linguistic identity of this.
So, if you look at it from a legal standpoint, Tanish, how did the government justify this policy?
Good question. So the government invoked Article 11 of the Constitution. Article 11 basically states the Parliament to regulate citizenship. It argued that the CAA is a reasonable classification under the Article 14, addressing a specific historical issue faced by the religious minorities in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan. However, critics contended that the classification violates the secular ethos enriched in the Constitution and discriminates on the basis of religion.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. Do you think this exclusion was discussed in the parliament?
Yes, but the debates were very polarized. The proponents highlighted that the need to protect persecuted minorities, while opponents pointed out the exclusion of Muslims and the potential marginalization of these groups, like Rohingya Muslims and the Shia Hazras, as mentioned by Varun.
Now, let's move on and see some challenges that CAA faced during implementation. So, Sanidhya, why has the rollout been so slow? Like, according to an article that I read by Al Jazeera, the Indian government announced the implementation of CAA in March 2024, a law that was passed by Parliament in 2019 but was not enforced until then. So, this decision has reignited debates and about the Act's implications. So, what are your thoughts about this?
Okay, so in my opinion, I think there can be three major reasons of this delay. So we can classify the first maybe the documentation issues, right? Because the refugees they always lack proof of their religious persecution or their residence in India prior to 2014. The second reason which I can think of maybe the bureaucratic bottlenecks, right? This process it requires district level committee to verify the claims, but these are undersatisfied and they are always undertrained. Last reason which I can think of is political resistance. For example, as it has been highlighted, that states like West Bengal and Kerala, they have refused to even implement this EA because they think that it is against the constitutional concerns. So these are the major three reasons.
Right. It's obvious that the implementation has faced lots of challenges. I remember reading a report in the Reuters in May 2024, and it noted that India has granted citizenship to the first 14 refugees under the CEA. And it highlights that such a slow pace of execution is being followed. Okay, so Varun, I would like your take on the quantification of the cost of implementation of CEA.
Okay, so let's consider just the administrative cost. For processing 25,000 applications, the government would need to invest additional staff, training, and infrastructure. Each application costs roughly around 2,000 to 5,000 rupees. To process, transitioning would take around 5 to 12 crores for the batch alone. This excludes long-term rehabilitation costs like housing, education, and healthcare, which could run into hundreds and thousands of crores annually.
Let's discuss about the legal and constitutional challenges that were faced by the CEA.
So, Tanish, there must have been some legal challenges against the CA as well. So, what's the status of that?
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of legal challenges, right? So Around 140 petitions were pending in the Supreme Court, and the primary contention is that CA violates two major articles. So first is the Article 14, that is the right to equality. Basically, it excludes the Muslims, right? And second is the Article 15, as the prohibition of discrimination is based on a religion.
And what do you think has been the timeline for the court's decision?
So the hearings have been delayed repeatedly, right, with no definitive timeline. A judgment is unlikely before mid 2025, leaving the act in a state of legal uncertainty.
Now let's discuss about the societal impact of the CAA. So Sanidhya, what has been the impact of CAA on the communities?
Okay, so we know, like as I mentioned earlier, right? India is a large country, so all the communities which are there, that they are definitely polarized. For example, in West Bengal, the Matua community, right, a Hindu a refugee community, they have largely welcomed the act. However, for many others, especially the Muslims, the CAA combined with the NRC has created existential fears. The act has also led to uptick in religious tensions, with at least around 45 incidents of violence linked to protests in 2020 alone.
Addressing the elephant in the room, what about its impact on Assam?
Correct. So Assam has witnessed significant unrest, right? The people fear that the CA will, legalize the presence of Bengali Hindu migrants, underwhelming the Assam Accord. The state's unique demographics and history of migration have made it a flashpoint of anti-CA protest. Assam presents a unique challenge, right? The state has witnessed violent protest almost every day since the launch of CA, with activists arguing that the CA undermines the Assam Accord of 1985 when it was first launched.
So far, we have discussed the implications, the formulation. Let's talk about its impact. What has the economic impact been on our country of the CA?
Okay, Varun. So, how does the CA affect India financially?
The economics impact is in twofold. Firstly, short-term costs, administrative and legal costs as we discussed earlier, and the long-term costs. Refugees will require infrastructures considering the housing, healthcare, education and jobs. A conservative estimate puts the annual cost of integrating 25,000 refugees at around 300 to 500 crores.
That's a lot of money, Varun. Do you think the act has been sustainable financially?
So without significant investment in refugees integration programs, sustainability is questionable. States will need financial assistance from the central government, which is already stretched to thin.
Okay, and how has the international community reacted to it?
Yeah, so exactly. So organizations like the UN, they have expressed concern, calling CA as discriminatory.
Okay, so we can all agree the impact of the CA has not been a calmer one. Let's evaluate it further. Riya?
Yeah. So evaluate the CAA's broader impact. Sanidhya, can you tell me that has it achieved its objectives?
So what I can say is it's a mixed bag, right? While some communities like the Matua in the West Bengal, they view the act positively, while others, for example, as the Muslims and those people, they think that this act is harming them. And in the news also we can see that the Muslims are being stated as stateless, right? And especially the association of the CA with the NRC has created widespread rage across the country.
From an economic perspective, the states are grappling with limited resources and are struggling to provide these services. For instance, it costs roughly around 1,500 rupees per month to provide basic sustenance to these refugee families. With over 25,000 pending applications, the financial burden on the states is mounting.
Now, moving forward, what steps can be taken to address these challenges?
Yeah, so that's the main point, how we can improve the policy, right? So in my opinion, first the government must ensure transparency in the implementation part. A clear time-bound roadmap is very, very essential for implementing acts like the CAA. And second, decoupling the CAA from the NRC could help, remove fears from the Muslim community that they are feeling stateless. And third, robust awareness in the common people and campaigns is much needed to spread awareness and propagate the correct message to the people.
Financially, states need more central support. The government could allocate a dedicated fund for refugee rehabilitation, modeled on schemes like the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Partnership with the NGOs could also help as the alternatives.
And I would like to add, as we know, the judiciary is the most important part of any country, right? And it plays a critical role as well. So to balance a verdict, we should ensure that the act aligns with the constitutional principles while addressing legitimate humanitarian concerns as well.
So this was a really educational discussion. What I personally took away from it is that CAA, even though it was well-intentioned in parts, I feel it had significant flaws in its implementation and formulation. Addressing these are very crucial for its success.
Yeah, exactly. And I would also like to thank all our viewers for staying with us till the end of the discussion. And also, I would like to thank our panelists who stated so many important points about the CAA. And our policy shapes nations, but their impact depends on how they are implemented.
So this has been a fascinating discussion. The CAA, like many other policies, sits at the intersection of society, law, and governance. Its future depends on how it is implemented and alongside how it is perceived.
So thank you for all your insights. Stay tuned for our next episode. Good night.